In 1670, a pilgrim strapped 7 raw coffee beans to his stomach and slipped past customs at the port of Mocha. That single act of smuggling helped build a plantation empire that would one day supply half the world's coffee. Coffee's story does not begin in Brazil. It does not begin in Colombia. It does not begin behind the counter of a modern cafe. It begins on a forest slope in the Ethiopian highlands, centuries earlier. There, goat herders noticed something strange. Their animals would not sleep after eating the red cherries of a certain wild shrub. The herders worked out why. Ethiopia, sometime before the 9th century, is where Coffea arabica grew wild in the highland forests of Kaffa, the region that may have given the drink its name. Those forests sat more than 2,000 meters above sea level, roughly twice the elevation of most European ski resorts. The cherries ripened bright red. Inside each one sat 2 flat seeds. Local communities chewed the raw cherries. Some mixed them with animal fat for long journeys, well before anyone thought to brew them. Around 1587, a Yemeni scholar named Abd al-Qadir al-Jaziri recorded the herder's story in a manuscript. Whether every detail of this legend is historically accurate remains debated among scholars, but the result is beyond dispute. By the early 1400s, traders had carried the seeds across the Red Sea into Yemen. That crossing changed what the plant was for. Sufi monasteries needed a way to stay alert through night-long prayer sessions, because falling asleep during a vigil was treated as a spiritual failure. A hot brewed drink solved that problem instantly. A ritual object had become a stimulant. A stimulant was about to become an empire. By the early 1500s, coffee had a name across the Islamic world, kahwa, and a home, the kahva khane. That combination turned a private stimulant into a public habit. In Cairo and in Mecca, you could find students, scholars, and night watchmen drinking it to keep working past sunset, 1 cup at a time. The coffee houses earned a nickname, schools of wisdom, because more political and scientific argument happened over a coffee cup than inside any formal academy. That reputation made coffee dangerous. In 1511, the governor of Mecca banned it outright, fearing that rebellion was brewing alongside the coffee. That did not last. Too late. By the mid-1500s, several hundred coffee houses had opened in Constantinople alone, roughly 1 for every 1,000 residents. Within decades, Ottoman sultans had built an entire court ritual around the drink. They employed a dedicated coffee maker, whose only job was preparing the sultan's copper cup exactly right. A single shipload out of Mocha could be worth several years of a merchant's earnings. Ottoman officials tracked those duties like a modern finance ministry tracks oil exports, since coffee was one of the empire's most valuable exports by the 1600s. Then coffee reached Venice. Then it reached London. Then it reached Paris. It was no longer a drink brewed for a late-night vigil. It was the fuel of an entirely new kind of public life. But there was a problem. For roughly 3 centuries, about as long as the United States has existed as a country, coffee could be grown commercially in exactly one place on Earth, the highland terraces of Yemen. Arabian traders enforced that monopoly at the source. You could carry raw beans out of the port of Mocha only after workers parched or boiled them, because a heated or boiled seed could never germinate. No fertile seed could leave the region and take root anywhere else. This is the part of coffee's history that most people never learn about. The clock was already ticking. Yemen just could not hear it yet. That monopoly held for generations, but it could not hold forever. Around 1670, according to enduring legend, an Indian Sufi pilgrim named Baba Budan reached the port of Mocha on his way home from Mecca. What he saw there changed the next 3 centuries of coffee history. He saw the wealth the coffee trade generated. He knew Arabian law made exporting a fertile seed a capital offense. Coffee did not leave Arabia by trade. It did not leave by treaty. It did not leave by purchase. He tied 7 raw beans to his stomach beneath his robes and walked out of the port unsearched. This decision seemed small at the time. It was not, because the rest of the world had tasted coffee, and the rest of the world wanted more. He carried the beans across the Arabian Sea, and he planted them in the hills near Chikmagalur in southern India. Those 7 beans became the ancestors of an entire national coffee industry. The Dutch East India Company had also probed the same monopoly for decades along the Malabar coast. By the 1690s, Dutch merchants had their own live plants growing in heated greenhouses in Amsterdam. Within roughly 30 years, Dutch colonial plantations on Java were producing coffee at a scale Yemen had never reached. A wall that had held for 2.5 centuries came down inside a single generation. In 1714, the mayor of Amsterdam gave King Louis XIV of France a single potted coffee tree, grown from Dutch stock, for the royal greenhouse in Paris. It was guarded like a crown jewel. Few kings had one. The king's own botanists watched over it day and night. A French naval officer named Gabriel de Clou wanted a cutting for France's Caribbean colonies. When the royal court refused him, he took one anyway. In 1723, he sealed the seedling inside a glass box and set sail for Martinique on a voyage that would take 2 months. A fellow passenger tried to destroy it, pirates attacked the ship, and fresh water ran low. De Clou shared his own ration with the plant, rather than let it die of thirst. Some historians doubt parts of that account, but the outcome is not disputed. That single seedling took root in Martinique. Its descendants spread across the French Caribbean within a decade. Coffee had left the old world's control entirely. It had landed in a place already organized around one purpose: growing tropical crops for European markets, using enslaved labor. By the 1730s, coffee seedlings descended from that Martinique tree had reached the French colony of Saint-Domingue. That arrival gave planters a second cash crop for hillsides too steep for cane. They expanded the plantation system uphill. Plantations climbed across the colony's north, west, and south provinces alike. The colony already ran on sugar, and sugar already ran on the forced labor of enslaved Africans. Coffee simply joined a system already built for extraction. By the 1780s, Saint-Domingue was producing close to half of the entire world's coffee supply. It was also producing close to 40% of Europe's sugar, on one French colony smaller than the state of Maryland. That output demanded labor on a scale the colony had never seen, so planters imported people at unprecedented scale. By 1791, an estimated 500,000 enslaved Africans were held on Saint-Domingue's plantations. If you are finding this story hard to look away from, hit subscribe. Stories like this one stay buried in most history classes, and there is more coming. The conditions were engineered for output, not survival. Enslaved workers cleared, picked, and dried coffee cherries by hand on steep terraces, often barefoot, under an overseer's whip. Owners calculated that it was cheaper to work people to death and buy replacements than to provide humane living conditions. Saint-Domingue's death rate reflected exactly that arithmetic. Many new arrivals did not survive their first few years on the plantations. The soil was perfect for coffee. The climate was perfect. The profit flowing back to France was enormous. That is what 7 smuggled beans, 1 stolen cutting, and roughly 120 years had ultimately built. A colony worked by 500,000 enslaved human beings, generating more wealth for its owners than almost anywhere else on Earth. That system could not last because the people inside it were not passive. In August 1791, enslaved leaders across the colony's northern plain, near Cap Français, coordinated a nighttime uprising. Within weeks, plantation fires lit the horizon so brightly that ships far out at sea reported seeing the glow. The fires spread fast. A formerly enslaved military strategist named Toussaint Louverture emerged from that uprising. He turned scattered revolts into an army that defeated Spanish, then British, then French forces sent to crush it. France was not amused, and France was not prepared. The war that followed ran for 13 years, through yellow fever epidemics, betrayals, and battles fought hillside to hillside across the same terraces coffee had been grown on. Disease alone is estimated to have killed most of the French army sent to restore control. It is estimated to have killed as many as 400,000 people before independence was won. 400,000. Think about that. Just gone. In January 1804, one of Louverture's officers, Jean-Jacques Dessalines, declared the colony an independent nation and renamed it Haiti. It became the only successful slave revolt in history to found a nation. The coffee terraces that had made Saint-Domingue the wealthiest colony in the Americas were, by then, largely ash. But here is the strange and unexpected part of this story. Haiti's revolution freed 500,000 people, but it did not free coffee from the system that had built it. The world still wanted the crop. Demand did not pause. Other colonies raced to fill the gap Saint-Domingue left behind. Cuba expanded its coffee estates. Brazil, which would not abolish slavery until 1888, expanded fastest, clearing rainforest across its southeastern highlands and planting millions of Arabica trees. Within a generation, Brazil was doing what Yemen once did, then Java, then Saint-Domingue. It was supplying the world with coffee, grown on land worked by enslaved people. Prices in European and American markets barely moved because the supply had simply shifted address. The system had not been defeated. It had relocated. While Brazil absorbed Haiti's lost market, Haiti itself faced a punishment that had nothing to do with coffee prices at all. In 1825, King Charles X of France sailed a fleet of warships into the waters off Port-au-Prince and delivered an ultimatum: pay roughly 150 million francs in compensation for the loss of the colony, including the value assigned to formerly enslaved people as lost property, or face invasion. Haiti's government agreed, because the alternative was war against the same power it had spent 13 years defeating once. To pay it, Haiti borrowed from French banks at steep interest. That created a second, financial version of the same extraction the plantations once ran directly. The chains had changed shape. The math stayed the same. Different name. By 1947, Haiti had finally finished paying off the debt. For over a century, a nation founded by formerly enslaved people spent part of its national budget compensating the descendants of the people who enslaved them. Independence did not end the extraction. It did not end the debt. It did not end the pattern coffee had followed since Yemen. A 2022 investigation estimated that the debt and the loans taken to pay it cost Haiti's economy as much as $21 billion in lost growth. This is the part that should make you angry. The coffee industry Haiti once led the world in never recovered its former scale. A nation that had ended one system of extraction spent the next century paying for the privilege. Today, none of the world's top coffee producers is Yemen, or Haiti, or even Java. Brazil alone grows roughly a third of the world's coffee. Ethiopia, its birthplace, now ranks among the smaller exporters. That is not a coincidence. Never was. Brazil leads, Vietnam follows. Colombia is close behind. The global coffee industry moves well over $200 billion a year, and very little of that reaches the people who grow it. The markup gets added after the beans leave the farm, not before. Smallholder coffee farmers across Ethiopia, Central America, and Southeast Asia frequently earn just a few cents for the beans inside a cup that sells for several dollars in London, or New York, or Belgrade. The plant found by goat herders on an Ethiopian hillside now moves more money than most national economies. Almost none of it moves back toward the hillside it came from. Coffee is not just a drink. It is 500 years of human ambition, greed, ingenuity, and cruelty, all brewed into a single cup. It was a system. Still is. It built religious ritual into a global trade network. It built, then burned, a slave colony that once supplied half the world's beans. It built a war for independence that killed as many as 400,000 people. It built a debt that outlived that war by more than a century. A wild cherry from a forest slope in the Ethiopian highlands became one of the most valuable agricultural commodities traded on Earth, and it is doing that work right now. It is the endpoint of 7 smuggled beans, 1 stolen cutting, 1 burned colony, and 1 debt paid off only within living memory. It is sitting in the mug in front of you right now, still carrying that history, 1 sip at a time. If this story surprised you, subscribe for more deep dives into the hidden histories behind everyday things that most people never think twice about. There is a lot more coming.